Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Unlocked, the Creative Podcast. This is going to be all about us pulling back the curtains on creativity, and we're going to be exploring how it takes shape across music, filmmaking, photography, writing, design, and every other expressive outlet in between. Each episode, we are going to sit down with a guest that not only shapes their industry, but is setting the stage for creative exploration. And our first guest is going to be a very special one to me. And I'm going to kick it off right. So you're definitely going to want to hang out for this one. And we have today a very true, multifaceted creative whose journey spans not only continents, cultures, and various art forms. Our guest was born in France and moved to the USA as a kid and quickly found countless ways to express himself, not only from drawing anime to breakdancing, parkour, and finally settled in music production in high school. His main passion of music production took him from North Carolina, where I met him, all the way to Los Angeles, where he finally got into modeling and acting. Not only being featured in projects like the Beyonce Black is King and Alicia Keys' 2019 Grammy performance, all of this while building a deep catalog of vinyl releases, live performances, and touring the world. In addition to his work as a producer, he just started his own label, Cyberware. So let me stop speaking for the man. He is here to speak for himself. And today we are going to unlock the story of the producer, designer, label founder, and creative mind behind KOROstyle. Welcome to the show, brother.
What a great introduction. Thank you for having me on.
I had big shoes to fill, right? So I tried to do my best. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for being our first guest. Like, this is going to be so special, I think. Not only this episode, but I think the project. And so let's start off and kind of like get into the back details. Like, you and I have been friends for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
At this point. And as I was doing, getting ready for this podcast, I look back at a lot of the moments that we've spent together. You and I, we pretty much would hang out every single night, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, you had approached me to help you with your first EP cover, Teehee EP.
Exactly.
And then, you were going to school at UNC Charlotte, and we got
to know through some crazy, fun college times, and we became great friends. And over time, we started working with each other, video, art. And we continued our friendship till today.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy to think back. There's very few friends that I think that I've remained in contact with, and yeah, we had like ramen like maybe like a year ago in LA.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to meet my wife, and yeah, dude, it was freaking crazy. Oh, and I was just thinking back, like I even edited one of your videos where you had the little Koro cat head like flying through like this like digital world.
That's right. And I used that for my music video, my first music video that I put out. That was wow, I forgot about that. Dude, it's been so long.
I know, yeah. That's why I was like, man, I really spent some time kind of dwelling on like our like relationship, our friendship, and like our work history. Yeah. And then as I was doing more research, and I was like, peeking through like your Instagram and all of your releases on Spotify, and I was like, damn, my homie is now in Vogue magazine.
Yeah.
like where did I go wrong in this world? But no, joking. Joking. And then yeah, dude, I think I remember like you had just came back from China and you did like your first China tour, and you had so much content that you filmed in China, and like I didn't even remember how to, like, at the time I didn't even know how to help you like pull it all together. So
Yeah,
I think you got somebody else to help you on that one. But
I did it. I ended up doing it myself, just with my film eye that I only took one course in college for. So I just assembled the clips and made something out of it. But yeah, like that first China tour was definitely something.
dude, so I figured, obviously you just released a track and I just started this podcast. I've been working on this kind of concept for a while. And it just seemed like maybe fate that you'd be our first guest, I think.
Hell yeah, yeah, I'm
So
stoked,
let's,
man. You to share my story and see where this
yeah,
goes. You could help
dude,
somebody or enlighten some minds.
yeah. I mean, everybody's got their own different way of kind of digging up their creativity. I feel like, and you see a lot of people who aren't creative and they just say that they're not creative, but I think
Hmm.
that's bullshit. Like everybody's got some creativity inside of their heart, soul, mind, whatever. And it's just all about learning how to like get it out.
Exactly. How to transfer it from the inside to the outside, whether it be any kind of artistic medium, painting, music, even things that might not be considered artistic, I consider artistic. I think art isn't limited to what we call art, and it's literally, in every aspect of life, in the good and in the bad. So,
Dude, I know everything we use has some form of art. You look at a cell phone or, a computer or whatever, like they're designed to be little pieces of art.
yeah,
Um, Something that I think is very special about your journey is, you're super multi-layered in the sense that, you've done anime drawing, I remember you doing breakdancing and shit. I mean, I think you were doing parkour like on
yeah. I was
UNCC
doing
and
it
we were
all.
hanging out and
I
then,
was doing it
and then,
all.
yeah. And of course music, right. Which is where you kind of, I guess, planted your flag. But talk to me about the early days on what set you or how did you understand that you wanted to be a creative?
I think it just came out of boredom. Back then, in the early 2000s, we didn't have the internet like we do today. You know what I'm saying? We were kind of left to play with, toys and just kind of be in our own rooms and just, kind of make make something of this length of time that we had in a day where we didn't have our phones, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have TikTok. So I mean, I think the creativity just came out of maybe seeing somebody breakdance on TV and just having nothing to do all day in a weekend. And so practicing that all day or just watching some anime and taking inspiration and drawing something. So I think the creativity started out of boredom and the lack of, technology to distract me.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, some people get into worse things,
Yeah,
but
true.
I myself chose the filmmaking journey.
Hmm.
Um, obviously, I know that you've grown up in France. Your parents are from Senegal.
Hmm.
Do you feel like culturally, like you landed here, or like maybe they've influenced you, like in a way to become a music producer?
Well, my parents were never for me doing anything artistic, whether it was, the animation, the breakdancing, the music. They never really truly wanted me to follow that route because, coming from traditional African parents, they wanted you to be, a businessman, a lawyer, an engineer, something that was going to bring money that had structure. The art is a very, it's not a grounded form of work. It doesn't have, much security. You don't get a pension. You don't get
Yeah.
health insurance. You know what I'm saying? It's something that can be on and off that, it's really hard to succeed in. And so, I mean, they understood that I didn't, and they didn't really want to push me towards following the artistic route. So me exploring my artistic endeavors just came from myself purely, and maybe some of the stuff that I was influenced by on TV or that I would see in real life.
That makes sense. And no, I mean, funny is I obviously I've been to your house and I've met your parents. I've met your mom and your dad.
Hmm.
And it seemed like you grew up from a very structured background. Do
Yeah,
you
very
do you
structured.
do you feel like maybe like art was like your form of like rebellion in a way, or
It was because, my dad had a very, raw life. He comes from the village in Senegal, like real mud huts, you know what I'm saying? Like he had to look
yeah.
at the sun to see what time it took, or what time it was, if he was too late walking to school or too early, you know what I'm saying? He would have to do his
Wow.
homework holding like a candle. So, I mean, like, his life wasn't filled with a lot of fun. It was filled with a lot of work. He worked really hard to get to where he is right now. And, you know, it, this whole artistic thing wasn't really in his mind. If anything, maybe some of the music that we listened to at home would influence me artistically a little bit. My parents would listen to a lot of like Latin jazz, or some Michael Jackson stuff, or maybe even some reggae sometimes, which I was really never a fan of, but maybe it had an effect on me. But that's the environment that I come from. I come from a very hardworking background where doing art isn't a for work isn't a reality.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, and I guess maybe it shows, right? Because you've dabbled in so many different creative outlets. Um, do you feel like there was a moment in your mind where you just said like, "Oh shit, like I really am an artist," or like did I still don't even feel like one. I personally I still don't feel like one. I'm sure you do because you actually do real art. I joke. I mean, I'm a film editor, I'm a filmmaker, but music production, and I've dabbled in music production. I don't want to corner you and just keep calling you a music producer because you're so much more than that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
is there a moment where you just said, "Oh shit, like I'm an artist"?
Um, I think it's when I started doing music production. Like dancing is an art, but I didn't think of myself as an artist when I was breakdancing, you know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Or even drawing. That was just kind of like, I was an amateur. I wasn't that great, and I didn't want to claim that title that early. I think when I started getting more serious into music, and then kind of getting more serious in my other artistic endeavors, that's when I was like thinking like, wow, I might be an artist. I like,
Yeah.
the creative path more than a structured, very linear path. I think
Yeah.
that's when it started. And I think maybe about a year into making music was when I was like, okay, I guess I'm an artist.
That seems like probably a good way to to hang your hat up on. And when we met, I mean, this was 2008, wasn't it? 2009,
Yeah, it was, yeah,
somewhere around
2008,
there?
2008,
Yeah.
2008 for sure.
And how long had you been producing when like we first like linked up?
Well, I wasn't really producing like that. I
Then,
had this
dude,
course in high school where, we learned how to use Fruity Loops, or, and
uh,
I would make music in class through that. Or, me and my friends would make some, in high school, we'd make some like YouTube videos in like the early YouTube days. And, we'd mess around with like making a background music for the videos that we would make. So that was the limit of the music production that I did before we met. The real production came after, I think, 2009, when I started working on music when I was studying abroad, and I went back to France, and I met some friends who
mhm.
were into music and started working with them, and then I brought that back with me. So before I met
Yeah,
you, it wasn't that serious.
and I think if I understood it correctly too, you had like went back to France, then you came back to the States, and you went to like the UK or something, right? And then you
Yeah,
came
yeah.
back to the States again, right?
Yeah,
Something like
yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. After graduating, I had some friends that I met in France that wanted to do like an art collective in Bristol, and so
Hmm.
I told my parents like, "Yo, I'm going to Bristol,"
See ya.
not knowing exactly, what I was really in for, but lasted about a year out there, and then went broke. Spent, the pound is double the dollar, and it was very
Yeah.
hard to find a solid job out there. So You know, I think after a year, the funds ran dry and it was time to come back.
Yeah, and so you hopped around, and we're gonna jump back to like your UK segment now, because as somebody who's a fan of your music and who listens to your music now, like it seems like the UK influenced you the most in music. We'll
Yeah.
visit that in a second, but um, jumping around these different places throughout the course of your life, do you feel like that kind of like helped you kind of manifest like a creative identity, or like, are there
Yeah.
sounds or visuals or moods from those places that you still realize in your work?
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely strengthened my identity. You know, I think everywhere you go, there's a notion that that place is going to change you. And Bristol in particular is one of those places where, you know, I'd have UK people. It's like, oh, you're from the States. Yeah, man, Bristol's going to change you, mate. You know, like,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
you know, it's one of those places where it's for sure going to change you. So, I mean, like, I definitely, you know, matured some. I absorbed some of the culture from out there. And I think that is definitely reflected in my music. You know, some of that kind of like, dark melodical UK
Mm,
music culture from, you know, drum and bass, jungle, bass line, garage, dubstep, grime, like it all kind of, you know, I was surrounded in this atmosphere, and that's some of my favorite music. So, you know, it enhanced my
yeah.
knowledge of the genres, and you know, it made me I think more rounded as a music head to be, you know, more to have experienced more of this culture.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'm a huge grime fan, which is part of the reason why I enjoy your music so much. But now looking back, and I'm sure your parents probably understand, your level of success now. Like, are your parents supportive of this journey, or like maybe dad kind of realized like, okay, cool, like my son's doing something important, like here's some advice. Like, has that ever occurred to you or happened?
Like I'd like to think that they're proud, but the way they react towards my successes shows that they are kind of indifferent. You know, I
Mm.
think they only care if you're really bringing the big bags with what you're doing. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
never about that, man.
That's what I'm saying. You know, they don't have that kind of understanding of, you know, art. And I guess, you know, how good of a sign it is to be able to sustain yourself and travel and do these things with art. Maybe you're not like rich or anything, but you're able to live your life freely doing things you enjoy doing. I don't think they value that really. My dad, I think, is more so relaxed about this kind of thing. My mom is kind of like, I was like, all right, when are you thinking about going back to school? Da 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 da. And they have a valid
Hmm.
point, because it's very hard navigating in this art lane. But for sure, I don't think they are super excited about what I'm doing.
That's all right. Maybe one day they'll understand. And I think as I progressed as a creative, an artist, or whatever. I don't even really call myself an artist still, but as a creative, if you can do that juggling act of having freedom, right? Like freedom of movement, freedom of activity, right?
Mhm.
And then you can pay all your bills, right? Scrape together, right?
Yeah,
And there's people out there that actually enjoy what you do. Like, if you can check all those three boxes, like that's how I define success in art.
I,
It's not like being Banksy or some shit where you tape a damn, or whoever, you tape a damn banana to a wall, and then
yeah.
like you go somebody goes and eats the banana, right? And for like $1 million, like
This
that
is
shit that shit I think sets us all up for failure in art, in
yeah.
my opinion.
That's true, because at the end of the day, you know, like for example, my dad has told me before, it's like, you know, I support whatever you do, but just know that, you know, it's important for you to be the best in what you do. But it's kind
Mm,
of tricky, because when it comes to art, like it's not about being the best. Like it's not a competition amongst other
right.
people. It's really kind of like an intrinsic journey towards, you know, discovering yourself and putting something that's deep inside outside for people to experience a new world. So, and I understand where they're coming from. They come from a, be the best, work really hard, and
Mm.
they want to look out for me in terms of, financial security, and they understand that the entertainment and art world is not an easy world to navigate. So I completely understand where they're coming from. It's
Yeah.
there's no shade that I'm giving to them for telling me all these things, or
No, for
guiding
sure.
me the way that they have.
Yeah, no, for sure. Something that I think, at least as in a creative field, right? Being the best is like, I don't even know what the hell that even means, right? Because like in music production, right, or video editing, right, and whatever, I can relate to the video editing, film production side, but like in music production, dude, there's kids with like 14-year-old kids with a fucking laptop that like can outproduce fucking even the most talented producers these days because they spent like 3 summers learning like FL Studio or like Ableton, and then they just it's like in the water or some shit, bro, like
I think outperforming only kind of makes sense in a business, and some people
right,
make art for work, for business. It's not
yeah,
art, it's business art. So I mean, when it comes to that term, it makes sense. Maybe there's like the best at making something that a lot of people can kind of like vibe with on a mainstream note. But when it comes to
mm,
actual art, it's a kind of a stylistic thing that doesn't really revolve around competing with anybody else but yourself.
yeah, I say that a lot, back note, but my wife is getting ready to start her own kind of like venture as like a language pronunciation coach. And the people that she looks up to, like she's like, look at all these people, da 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 da, like she's always comparing herself to like other people. And I know like we all do that, right? Like we all take inspiration from other people,
Mhm.
but the way that we differentiate ourselves is how we package it, right? Like you're going to package something differently. I'm going to fold the right corner first. You're going to fold the left corner first. Like you're going to tie your shoes differently. Like you're going to dress differently. Like and that's what art is. That's what creativity is. It's
Yeah,
expression, right?
yeah, exactly.
So like in a weird way, like even comparing yourself to another artist or another creative, it's almost like an uncomparable control, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for maybe fueling that fire. It's like, man, like, why is
Mm.
this guy like a touring millionaire who doesn't really even
Yeah.
make his own music? And then I'm like, out here and I'm not a millionaire. So maybe that makes me have that fire to, push myself more. I think that's the best use case for that comparison. But it's not a healthy thing because, this is when it comes to art, not business art. It's all
Sure.
about self-expression. It's about the self. It's really not about anybody else, but you expanding, learning, growing, and putting yourself out there in a very raw, natural way. And that's
I
something that
think
really doesn't involve anybody else.
I think people are starting to kind of like the consumers, whether it be the downloaders, the podcast listeners, or whatever, right? The people that watch my YouTube videos or people that download your, or buy your LPs, like, they're becoming more savvy than ever, right? And I can tell, I guess me personally, maybe, or I have a bullshit detector where I'm like, all right, this guy's just doing this for money. And you can
Mhm.
tell, like, the passion may or may not be there. Like,
It's
there's all,
very easy to tell. It's very easy to tell. I mean, our ears and eyes see things and hear things all over the place, and we know when something's a copy, or we know when something's
mm,
kind of meant for a mainstream audience for money related purposes. We can tell easily.
oh yeah. Yeah, especially and I think in music it's a little easier to tell.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about music. At this point, again, I hate to corner you and just say you're a musician because you're so much more at this point. But you really have kind of created a brand and an identity and a name for yourself in grime and dubstep. Those are really genres with really, really, really strong like underground roots.
Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me about like what drew you to those that genre, like those sounds, like over others,
I think it was very natural, coming to America as a kid. I wasn't aware of America's music history, so I didn't. When I got into middle school and high school, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you don't listen to K97.5, the rap state. You don't know this, and you don't know who all these famous people are in especially like the Black community and in artistry." And so I kind of had to craft my own lane in terms of discovering music, and it started with listening to the radio. And I stumbled upon this one station called 88.1. It was
Oh yeah, indie,
yeah, indie electronic. They're playing a lot of
like
weird,
college vibes and shit.
yeah, IDM and all sorts of various niche genres. And one day I heard this one electronic track by Kraftwerk, I believe this the artist, and that song got stuck in my head. And so little by little I started gravitating towards electronic music, listening to that station more and more. They would play drum and bass, and then MTV sometimes back in the day when it used to be a music channel. They used to play music from the UK from time to time, and I gravitated towards this one in particular by the Streets called "Let's Push Things Forward." And
Oh yeah, so good.
yeah, that was a classic in my eyes, and I think in a lot of people's eyes. And I think that's really what kind of navigated me towards this niche underground style that I'm doing.
Dude, that's so funny that you bring that up. And then to me, I'm thinking like as I'm putting together my research for this interview, I'm thinking like maybe the light switch hit you when you were in Bristol. Or was that the moment that kind of like paved the future for you instead of the spark?
Yeah, I think so. That was one of the first times I took a really big risk and just being like, all right, just you stay, you're at home, then you go to college, and then after college, you just do something. And for me, it was taking a risk on just traveling to a country I've never been before, and trying to do an art creative. So that's what gave me, I guess, that fire. It was the risk and trying something and doing something new. So that paved the way towards taking more risks and trying new things. But I think the spark has started in college before I traveled abroad.
Wow. So I was friends with you when the spark happened. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, exactly. That was one time I was, probably blasting a lot of this dubstep that, I've never heard before. And I was showing all my friends, and I was playing this stuff like daily, almost being like a paperboy for dubstep. And that's when my excitement for the style started.
I think you were my like entry outlet into grime as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Awesome,
because dude, I still listen to all that shit, man. Like dude, like some of my favorite videos to watch on YouTube are like the Sir Spyro like freestyles, dude, where he just literally like like in the center of London, like just on some turntables, just dropping these beats, and there's just like a crew of people that just like throw the mic around. Oh, dude.
Exactly. It's so much energy, and like you can tell it's organic. It's not really hype based, and it's all about kind of showcasing your style and putting out something that's raw. And
oh my god,
that's what grabbed me as well.
I love that.
Those beats you would play were crazy. I mean,
dude, they're so good.
You never heard before, sounds that you never heard before.
I know, man. And then, dude, like I've really been vibing on, and I hate to name drop, and this is your podcast here, but no, like the new like DEE, like I think it was like an EP or like an LP, like he just recently came out with.
The JW is a great
And
MC.
dude, and his samples like in that album, like are just so good.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a lot of the reasons I really respect UK music culture, because they're really they're making really great stuff that's different and that's organic, and it's refreshing. You know, it breaks the monotony of a lot of the stuff that you hear in America.
no rules, no rules. I love that.
Exactly.
Um, let's talk about like your creative journey, your production process, like how do you get going? Like what is your first spark? And how do you know? Because I know, and most of us may know who are listening, hopefully they're creatives, but you're never really done with a piece of, a project, right? Like you can always repaint the same canvas, you can always re-edit a movie and turn it into a different story.
Mhm.
Like, so I want to talk about your first spark. Like, what is the first spark for a KOROstyle like production?
I want to say it comes from a certain mood or vibe that I'm feeling, that I want to kind of like,
Mm,
make into a song. But at the same time, my production is completely different from that. You know, I open my DAW and I just kind of play. So it really starts with play, and then I start messing around with sounds, and a lot of stuff doesn't make sense at the beginning, but little by little I end up making maybe a cool sound here, and then it starts to shape, and then I add another sound here, and then little by little it starts to build into a track. And this track might be even irrelevant to the mood that I wanted to communicate at the beginning. So it kind of just builds itself um, by itself. It doesn't start from me trying to do anything besides playing. I think I would like it to be more, I guess, consistent, but every time I make something, it's something kind of much different from, I guess, what I originally wanted to do.
yeah. I again, I don't even know a lot of times for me, like what I'm doing half the time, but somehow like something comes out, right?
Yeah.
Um, but something that I guess like, I've noticed at least with your music, like you have a clear fingerprint, right?
Mhm.
Like, you can tell like it's in a weird way, you can kind of tell it's one of your, it comes from your mind, right? Like
I find that
every,
very fascinating.
you find that what?
Very fascinating, because I haven't ever really tried to kind of stamp myself on a certain
Mm,
style. And it's something that I think is more observable from the outside than the inside, because
maybe.
all my tracks are not really, I don't build from the same sounds. So there's something, I'm always trying to make something new, trying to create something different. And, you know, for some reason, somehow people can tell that, there's some kind of familiarity between all these tracks. And I think that's something that I don't necessarily control. It's just kind of like a natural kind of effect that I have on what I do, that kind of makes people say, "Oh yeah, that's definitely a KOROstyle track." I can't
it
really pick
it's
it out myself, but I think other people can pick it out more than I can, for sure.
I I pick it out because it's got a certain level of filth to it, but it's still got like a layer of refinement, which is
Mm,
weird to say.
interesting.
But I don't know if it's maybe like you have like your favorite like instruments, right, that you're using in your DAW, or like I don't know what it is, man, but like I literally spent for last night, like I literally went through pretty much your entire like portfolio of music, and I tried to like simulate myself like and understand where you were at in your life when you were, releasing these songs. And then um and yeah, I know that's the most challenging thing I probably can do, but um I felt like I had the right to do that because I know you.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, there's just so many like you could just tell, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm just
That's fascinating,
maybe
because
I
yeah, I still can't tell personally. every time I listen to my catalog, it's just different. It's all different music to me, and
I
I can't pick out that specific thing that connects them, but others can. It's very interesting.
it's probably because you've produced so many tracks. Like that's happened to me in video production where like I've done a
Mhm.
video project for a client and then they like upload something and I'm like, "Oh, this looks very similar to what I did. Like, did I even do this? Like, was this my work? Like, I don't even know anymore." Like,
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very weird thing to analyze.
let's talk about like the moment and your thought process before completion, right? Like you've already laid out the entire track. It's all structured. Like you love everything about it, or maybe you hate everything about it. But at what moment do you know that like this is complete and ready to post or
I think
distribute in your case?
it's when I feel that my sounds are clean to the level that I like, but then it's also to the level that my computer can handle because, I'll have like so many different tracks going, maybe like 50 to 70 sometimes.
Oh
And
shit.
my computer just starts to bug and just stutters every time I play it. So there's not much I can do beyond that point.
Yeah.
So I think that's when I'm like, okay, I mean, I might as well just refine what I have going on and put it out.
Bro, you got to get yourself one of those new Mac minis, man. Those
I
things are
do. I have a brand new MacBook. I just seem to gravitate towards my old computer or my old laptop that
uh
and I'm still using Ableton 8 on it. They have Ableton 12 now, and it's way more
oh
complex.
shit.
But I'm just so comfortable and skilled with the DAW that I'm using. So I've gotten very
Yeah.
comfortable with that specific DAW and just I think the limits also kind of help distinguish my style as well,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of different variants in in sound that you can do with Ableton 12 that you can't really do with Ableton 8. Well, you can, but it's just not as easy. And so I guess the limit of what I can do kind of um, stamps what I do with a certain style.
Bro, I'm gonna have to help you like on my like nerdy side. Like I'm gonna have to like help you get your new MacBook set up. And then
It's
what we're
funny.
gonna what's that?
I have Ableton 12 set up on my computer, or is it 12 or 11? I think. Yeah, I have Ableton 12 on the laptop that I'm using right now, brand new MacBook M3, I believe, and I have it running with VSTs, and I've used it. It just doesn't click with me as well as the older versions of Ableton.
Nah. Now what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to like partition your hard drive, right? So that way you've got the performance of your new MacBook, right? But then we can
Mhm.
install on the partition like an old ass version of like Mac. So
Yeah,
you can boot into like your older version of Mac with like Ableton 8 or whatever.
yeah.
Uh,
The other
it's
computer I'm using is Windows, so maybe we can find a way to connect the Windows to the Mac and
got you. I got you. I got you.
yeah.
Um, I guess I already asked this question in a different way, and well, you didn't seem to, you're interested in it, but maybe I guess you may not know how to answer this. But you talked a lot about experimentation to get to like the right sound and the right melody and getting to like a complete track. Like I was gonna ask, like, how do you stay true to like your sound identity?
I don't really think I have I don't operate on the sense that I have a sound identity.
Mm,
And the identity is kind of, like I was saying earlier, observed more from the outside than from within. So
mm.
for me, I don't really have anything that I do to make me stick to, this identity. Of course, there's the genre that I like and certain, you know, melody arrangements that I like, but I think that's really about it.
How do you like push yourself right from like release to release?
I think it comes from hearing different, artists' music And I think that's what gives me the fire to be like, wow, I really like this. Like, let me see if I can make something similar. And then I try to do something like that. And then it comes out completely different. And then, the process repeats itself. I think
No,
it's garnered by other people's fire. Yeah, like
makes sense. Like friends and people that inspire you, that are close to you, that just keep the torch under your ass.
yeah, yeah. You see what other people are doing. You see where the genre is starting to kind of like, expand, and you're like, wow, this is much more broad than I thought. And then there's so much thoughts and inspiration that run through my mind, and it gives me a little drive to create.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious if maybe like looking back like I said, I was going through your back catalog. Um, is there a track that you feel like in your back catalog that really defines like who KOROstyle is?
Mm, probably my latest track, which which
Oh,
kind of
okay.
brings me to where I'm at right now, what I enjoy, and kind of like the mood that I'm trying to, I guess, communicate right now. That's really what it is. If not, then I think there's this one remix I did of a track by G3. Let me
Mm,
see, what's the name of this track again. It's give me 1 second. The track is Devil Jin, and
okay.
I did this remix about 4 years ago, and that's probably one of my favorite tracks of mine that I go back and listen to. I think I just really like where I took the original song, and I like the soundscape that I created around it. I mean, I made something that I never heard before, and that was really fresh to me. And I think that's something I really resonate with.
And so your most recent release, you're talking about Freak Storm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that guys, you're gonna have to go listen to that. But I think my most favorite song from you is actually On Site.
On site. Oh, okay. The instrumental or the one with the MCs?
The one with the MCs, dude. Like
Mm,
just so good, man.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That was a fun track to work on. It was originally just supposed to be an instrumental, and the label I released it under wanted to put some MCs, but there was already so much going on in the track. I took out a nice layer, and I filled it with the MCs.
dude, it just seems like everything came together like perfect in my opinion, right? Like just the flow from MC to MC, like the production, like the mastering, like the fidelity, like it just really seemed to kind of, in my opinion, be like that perfect marriage.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I enjoy that track a lot.
Yeah. Let's talk about you've done a lot of live performances, like I think I've seen shit, dude. I've probably when I was working with you, like, dude, I think we did like Greensboro. Did we do Greensboro? I know we did Raleigh, I think one time. We did Charlotte.
Yeah,
Shit, I
we
could
just
have
saw.
swore we did like something in like Greensboro
I do
or some
remember
shit.
being in Greensboro. I don't remember if you were there for that, but I definitely was in Greensboro.
I did. It's been too much. I know we definitely did Raleigh and Charlotte for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and then dude, just I mean, I feel like you got like a shitty slot, like in
Yeah,
Charlotte, dude.
in
Like
Charlotte,
you.
yeah, the promoter. I mean, he's kind of canceled, low key. He's not really that cool of a guy. I think he was mostly focused on building his own name than kind of like sticking to the integrity of
Like the
the
artists.
the music scene.
I'd
So I
agree
think,
with that.
and I think his lack of knowledge as to who is who and who's doing what played a factor into that.
So when you're standing on stage and looking down at like a slammed audience, like and everybody's vibing, like like what's going through your head, man? Like
It's overwhelming, to be honest. I'm more low key, kind of like in my own world, kind of thing. So I mean, I just kind of like zone
just
into
look
my
down.
own world. It's nice to see the people vibing, but like I just kind of stick to what I'm doing. It's the
Yeah.
only sucks is when sometimes some people are leaving.
Hmm.
I remember I was playing this show in China, and like this one venue, usually people kind of like venue hop. So while I was playing, there was a couple people leaving, and that's kind of like annoyed me a little bit. But I tried to
Oh
not pay
shit.
too much to the crowd and just kind of focus on what I'm doing. I already have my track list set up. I'm not playing anything kind of like outside of what I already planned to play.
Hmm.
So I just kind of focus on what I'm doing. And if the people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. But the great thing is that they came there to enjoy my artistry. So I'm kind of free to do what I want.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I've talked to like DJs, right, who really like feed off the crowd's energy and like kind of wing it, right? Which
Hmm.
is not necessarily the same for like a music producer like yourself because you're playing your own material, right? So you need to package your material, right? Versus
Yeah.
just a DJ who can go out there and like wing it, you know?
Yeah. I think everybody has a different DJing style. I'm extremely particular on my track listing. I like things to kind of really make sense,
Mm,
from the beat pattern to the melody. So I'm extremely critical, and I try to plan that as much as I can before I hit the stage.
makes sense. Let's jump into like, if you want to, like the Koro cat, which is like became like the image and interpretation of your. I mean, is it fair enough to call it like an alter ego or like what? Like explain the
No,
Koro cat.
it's just I wouldn't say alter ego. It's just my main my it's just me. I think it's just like
Mascot.
yeah, my mascot exactly.
Dude, you need to
That
get one of those.
yeah.
Sorry.
What were you saying?
Oh, I was gonna say you need to get one of those fucking like plushies done up, bro. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah. To be honest, I'm really excited into diving into that part of the Koro cat, as I call it,
mm,
because I really like that logo, and there's a lot I can do with it, and I've had a lot of ideas. So yeah, I'm making plushies or maybe little like coin pouches or yeah, little accessories. Is
it would be a perfect Labubu alternative.
yeah.
Facts.
Yeah.
Um, how did that like that mascot like how did the coral cat like even come to life? Like where in your head did you say like, yo, shit, I'm gonna make myself a damn mascot?
Well, the logo comes from kind of a lot of things. Like, let's say the cat is my spirit animal. I
Mm,
resonate a lot with how cats are. They're very to themselves. They're low key. They're smooth. That's how I am as a person. I wouldn't consider myself any to have much similarities with any other animal but that.
mm.
And so, I was in Paris, and all throughout France, there's this guy. I forgot his name. Let me see if. Yeah, his name is Monsieur Chat. It's like Mr. Cat.
Huh.
And if you look him up, he's like he's a graffiti artist who makes this cat logo, and it's like a full body of a cat with a big smile, and you'll be on the train, you'll be walking down the street, and you'll see his logo everywhere. He's like almost like a Paris Banksy in a way. And
Wow.
so I really resonated with that, and I started just playing with that as inspiration, and pretty much crafted my logo from the images that he would put out there.
Right. I mean, dude, that's that's inspiration at its finest. Do you ever see? I mean, I know, like, we talked. We did the music video, right, with the Koro cat, and like, do you ever see like the Koro cat kind of appearing in different types of like mediums,
Yeah.
like animations and like, I mean, all
Yeah.
different
I've definitely had
different.
ideas of, some kind of anime incorporating the cat, or, certain accessories, or maybe even a comic. So
Mm.
yeah, there's definitely a lot of ideas in that realm.
And And do you see it as like a whole like visual brand, or like an extension of your identity, or like a whole creative universe? Like how do you see the Coral Cat?
I see it as I see it as myself, really. It doesn't
Hmm.
have a whole universe yet, but it's something that kind of already has been built. With my first music video, I showed the process of how the cat kind of was created, and then
Ah,
the clip that we did with you and Charlotte, I used that as the ending of the music video. So pretty much like it starts off in a spaceship, and we're zooming in into the spaceship, and you have these little arms who are like electrically crafting this cat, and then at one point it just gets off of the spaceship, and then in the clip that we worked on, it's kind of traveling around the streets, and just kind of like going
actually,
into the world.
I think I worked on both of them, if I'm not mistaken, because I remember the spaceship.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if I did the street ones. I actually think I did the first one instead of
no,
the
no,
Coral Cat kind of exploring the world.
the first one I worked with this guy in Raleigh, by the name Thumper, and
Well, I think
the
he did the animations, but I like cut the narrative. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not. I don't recall that, but
I
you're apart from what I believe, because it was so long ago. Jeez,
yeah, for
that,
sure.
that bit really tied in a lot of what that music video kind of was leading to, kind of like the Cora Cat becoming
Yeah,
part of the world.
dude, amazing. So let's jump ahead. I mean, we we just talked a lot about the early days. Dude, you're in LA now, and now you're in modeling, like acting, like I mean, doing shit with like Beyonce and like Alicia Keys. Like,
Yeah.
how did you get into that? Like, that is so left field for me.
Yeah, it was left field for me too. I never, had in my mind that, I was going to do anything acting or modeling or commercial related. It's just
Mm,
kind of like the vastness of the, entertainment industry in Hollywood. So, I came here, and, I had some friends who were like, yeah, you should get on these casting websites and just submit, you never know what you might book. And so I was like, you know what,
yeah.
why not? I'm still kind of working my way along in LA, and you never know where opportunities come from. So I started doing that, and little by little, I started booking some really interesting things. I think people were really fascinated with my hair at the time, because it was kind of like a symbol of my artistry. It was very different. It was the Wakanda, I guess what people would call the Killmonger hairstyle, with the dreads that went off to the side. I was doing that since like 2010. And so when I
Mm,
came here, it was something very fresh and new. And I think a lot of companies and brands wanted to use that style in their marketing.
yeah, that makes
Little by
sense.
little, it started to spread, and now it's become very mainstream, this style, which I'm pretty sure I influenced, because being in Hollywood and working with a lot of directors and makeup artists and creatives, a lot of them would approach me and be like, "Oh, could you mind if I use your hairstyle in a video game, or you mind if I use your hairstyle in a comic book?" And I did, coming into this, with fresh ears, I didn't know how big some of these things could be, so blindly me saying yes, I think some of these things became really major, and it was something that I wasn't ready for.
Fair enough. Do you feel like jumping into like the like modeling and acting has like fueled your creativity in music production? Like, has there anything that you've borrowed or stolen from like modeling and acting
Mm,
that you use today? I mean,
mm,
you're still probably doing it, but I mean, do you see
when it
those arts connecting?
when it comes to music, not really. To be honest, it's in its own separate universe. The only thing I think I've gotten from doing all this is having maybe broader perspective. Because I meet like hundreds of people every time I go on set. So I have
Mm,
conversations with loads of different people, and I gain perspective from all different walks of life. And also, I play different roles, and do different things. Maybe I'll be a bartender. Maybe I'll be like an alien on a space Star Trek show or movie, or and
Right.
the different wardrobe that they give me is stuff that has broadened my wardrobe palette. Coming to LA, I kind of dressed almost wearing a lot of the same things all the time, and I didn't, I never wore boots, I never wore shorts, I never wore like button-up shirts. But then like you try on these styles and you're like, wow, this looks really good on me. And then now I have a pair of boots and a bunch of shorts, and so I think the only thing that's kind of pushed me to expand on is my clothing palette, and maybe expanded my awareness of different people and walks of life.
Dude, sick. Let's jump into like, your philosophy, like your mindset, like, as an artist, and we all go through these weird little like waves of creativity. Like, how do you get out of those moments and how do you keep pushing?
I think it's important to take time to, not force yourself when you're in a kind of like writer's block, for example, and just take some time to just, breathe, soak up some inspiration, and, just take some time to refresh yourself. And I think that's what helps me keep going. I at this point right now, I don't feel like I have to be forced to do something when I'm not feeling it. So I let it come more naturally, and it's better that way, in my opinion.
Well said. As an artist, we all take risks, and you talked about like moving to Bristol being like a huge like risk of your life, like is there a moment in your career that you feel like you've taken like a huge creative risk, like maybe jumping from genre to genre, or like in your career, what's been your biggest creative risk?
Let's see. I think starting a label, that was something that, I didn't have much knowledge about. And that
Hmm.
was something that, I wasn't really prepared for. But, we continue to make it work. We continue to find artists, and we continue to, pump out, new and fresh material.
Yeah. Is there ever been a moment where you've like literally just considered giving it all up?
Sometimes, but I think it's just, you know, allowing myself to breathe and take a break, and realizing why I'm doing certain things. You know,
Mm,
um, I realize that I'm doing this not really to pop off, but to kind of, deep dive into myself, and to,
yeah.
discover, how I'm feeling, and, push that out in music. So to understand that it's not a competition, that I'm not here for the money. I think that's a very motivating factor.
Yeah. Do you feel like, because I always see music as like a moving target, like genres change, like artists like, flip flop and trends are always evolving. Like, do you feel like you need to like have a strategy to navigate, like
I
to stay in the limelight, or like,
I used to, but at this point, I think it's, you know, upon realizing more and more how intrinsic this journey is, I've kind of just ignored the trends, and ignored the, oh, you have to release a track every month, and da da da. And I
right.
think just the fact that I have a lot of people that have kind of stuck around and listened to what I do, and kind of been into my artistic journey, whether it's been through music and whatnot, has helped me keep going, and just kind of take it easy, not have to rush things and try to be something that I'm not.
Well said. Well said. Let's talk about something that as a creative, I've learned a lot. I mean, I'm in the watch industry. I think I've told you that at this point,
Yeah.
um, and my watch podcast led me to creating this podcast, because I was like, fuck, dude, there's so many great conversations I want to have that I'm not having outside of the watch industry.
Mm,
I love it, right? But there's more discussions to be had. There's more perspectives I can get, and it's not like somebody like you can come on a watch podcast and talk about watches, but
yeah.
but I being in that industry, a lot of brands lean on legacy,
Mhm.
and they also try to build for the future, right? Like this is a perspective that I've borrowed from that industry.
Mhm.
So the reason why I bring that up is like what is the next step for KOROstyle? Like how are you like preparing for your future, and how are you archiving your legacy?
I think it's by keeping an open mind and always challenging myself to doing something new, whether or not it aligns with, I guess, where things are going in the entertainment. I think that's what prepares me for the future. And in terms of maintaining a legacy, I'm not really worried about that so much. I don't see my personal endeavors as something that I want people to to think of as like legacy. I want people to appreciate what I'm doing at my current state, and if they want to look back and see how I built up to where I am now, that's cool. But I don't really care for the back end of what I'm doing now. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
wow.
It's a bit
Yeah,
confusing.
I'm surprised to hear that, because most people, like, when you look at like your career trajectory,
Mhm.
like 10 years from now, like I hope personally that people are still enjoying my work that I did 10 years ago or 5 years ago or last month, right? I think that's one of the most rewarding things about being an artist, that people, not only do they grow with you, but they continue to appreciate where you started and in your evolution.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing to influence people and for people to appreciate your work, but I really don't care so much for people appreciating my work. I think if let's say I pass, right, and 10 years from now nobody listens to my music or watches some of the video stuff that I do or my KoroCat stuff, it would not bother me at the least. I think if people decide to look upon my life journey and gain something from that, that's cool, but it's nothing that I want to push on people. This is like a
Right.
pure personal journey for me, and so if people can get something out of it, that's beautiful, that's amazing, that's probably the most I could appreciate out of it. But if they don't and they never notice me, that's fine. But I definitely think that you know my life experiences could benefit some people.
I definitely agree. And that's an interesting way to look at it, cuz I'm always focused on telling a story, right? So like I am very expressive of myself. Like my art is for me, but I also try to package it where people can understand it,
Mhm.
Like it's already challenging enough to be an artist.
Mhm.
And it's like making your own language, right?
Mhm.
Like if I can only talk to myself in my head with my own language, like there's no fun in that, So I try and I try to package things that other people can get on board with. Like if I was following my vision 100% of the time, which I mean I'd say 98% of the time I am, um, then I don't really know where I'd be as a creative personally. But
I mean,
it's a cool perspective that you have for sure.
yeah, yeah. I think it's just important to focus on what you want to do and expand and to grow.
Yeah.
And personally, everybody's different with it, but
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if people don't understand something or things don't connect or they're not linear from an outside perspective, I'm not really phased by it.
Wow. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
But,
And,
but
and
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
naturally things kind of, like you said, you can notice my style,
Yeah.
and I can notice my style. I'm pretty sure even if, my idea of what I want to do isn't exactly linear, I'm pretty sure people can see that there's some kind of linearity just off of who I am and just, you know, uh, the rawness of how I operate.
Makes sense. It brings to question, like, you talked a lot about, doing music for yourself and being a self-expression outlet. But if you had the opportunity to collaborate with any artist, past or present, who would that be and why?
I like Madonna a lot. I sample a lot of Madonna in my music. I just love the tone of her voice. And I like a lot of her old tracks. So if anything, it'd be Madonna. And
That's a big
as
one.
well, this one artist's name is Benga, and he created, in my opinion, one of the best dubstep albums to date. I think he released it around maybe 2005 or six or something. It was called a New Step, and that was one of the first albums that really pushed me into the genre. I think, yeah, it would definitely be Benga and Madonna. But if I had to pick one, I think it'd be Madonna.
Have you shot your shot yet? Like,
Low key, I send her a DMs like, "Yo, I sampled your voice in my song. If you'd be kind enough to check it out."
Madonna, if you're listening, get on it.
I'm Madonna. Yeah, let's do something.
What's one project that you've always kind of like dreamed of doing, but you haven't yet got around to doing?
I want to make an anime. I want to make like a cartoon, and I think with all this AI thing, it's even more possible now. But I have some scripts written down for like a multi-episode anime series, and I think that's something that I want to pursue in the future. But you never know. I'm not really like if it doesn't happen, that's fine. But that's something that would definitely bring me some excitement because I'm a big fan of old animes. Like I don't watch too much anime nowadays, but growing up, it definitely had an impact on me, and it's definitely something I'd like to dive into.
I'm assuming if that were to manifest and become a real thing, KOROcat would be in the anime.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
I was even thinking, I was like, all the friends and people I've made along the way would be even background characters in this anime. So like, let's say the guys or girls having coffee somewhere and there's people in the background or walking. Each of these people would be people that I've had interaction with in my life.
Bro, hopefully you write me into that, man.
Yeah,
hopefully.
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure. If that happens, then you're gonna see yourself on the, in the cartoon.
Dude, now I'm gonna be texting you about that shit like every week now.
That'll be some motivation.
But if the KOROcat was to become, this character and not only transcended a character on your anime, like your aspiring anime series, right? What would you hope the KOROcat would stand for?
I would hope it would stand for a symbol of rebellion against the people in charge, and also a representation of goofiness because I'm a goofy person. I like to make people laugh. I like joking with friends and just being goofy. I think it cuts a lot of the straightforward like black and whiteness of life. It adds a little more color to the palette. And I'm a big rebel, so I think the KOROcat being a mascot of who I am, I'd like it to represent those aspects of myself.
Amazing. I know you talked about kind of like, again, using music as a self-expressive outlet. But, you have fans. You clearly have fans. Like, you're doing tours in Asia and you're playing live performances and you're releasing vinyl records and people are buying your records. So like, 20 years from now, like, how do you want your work to be kind of like described or like even remembered if you care about that?
I want it to be up for interpretation. Like a lot of painting. I think a lot of artists kind of lean on how you view it and how you understand it and how you perceive it. So I think it's it's on an individualistic note for whoever is the observer. I don't really have a straightforward idea of what I want them to think. I don't think I'm too in charge of those effects of my art. So I'd rather let them paint the picture personally as to what they feel, and not kind of like, speak objectively as to what it is, but, just subjectively as to what they think it is.
That's such a unique perspective because a lot of the creatives and artists that I talk to, they're in a weird way, they're kind of control freaks where they want you to feel a certain way when you hear a melody, or they want you to think a certain thing when you have like a vocal layer, or like,
Mhm.
they're trying to control the experience
They can
from like
try.
start to finish.
They can try, but they are not in control of that. And everybody
Yeah.
hears something different when they hear music. They see something different when they see life or art. So,
Yeah.
and the effects of your music, sometimes it could lead to some people doing great things. Sometimes it could lead to some people doing bad things. It's something
Yeah.
that we're not in control of. And so trying to control that isn't bad. I think it kind of sets the tone as to what you want people to think of you, but
Hmm.
you're not in control of how people perceive your music, and everybody sees it differently. Even if they all kind of relate to it in mass, they hear something different when they hear the art.
Dude, that's news to me, and that is a very kind of deep answer, like I never expected.
Yeah, that's how
uh,
the brain works. I was in this one of my favorite museums in Paris called Musée Pompidou. I went there a couple months ago, and I saw this one art piece that kind of showed how the brain works when it observes images. And what we do is we see certain things, and then our brain fills out the rest. So sometimes we might even fill it with things that are not even present in the art. An
wow.
example of this effect is one time there was this letter that was near my door that was for somebody else. But when I picked up this letter, and the first couple letters was SA followed by B, but I didn't really see the B. But in my mind, I was like, oh, SA, Sadyr Diouf. And when I looked at the letter, I saw my name, but then like I looked again and it said Sabrina something, and that really perspective as to like, wow, our brains work very interestingly, and everything we observe not in full, and we kind of piece things together from our own experiences and our own moods, and we make sense of an image or a sound. So just
I
based on how our brains work, it's impossible for us to see and feel the same things when we look at the same thing.
Dude, that is like a mic drop right there. I think if we were going for a soundbite, at least one soundbite, I think that was it.
Let's
Like
get it.
that, dude, that was epic. Like I've never heard that. I've never thought about that. And that's totally going to change the way that I create from now moving forward.
Hell yeah.
Insane. Um, so obviously the whole goal of this podcast is to like put it all out there to help people find their creative inspiration. And so that's gonna bring us to our final question. There may be somebody out there listening, like who is an up and coming music producer, coming from an entire different background, just getting going, like, or maybe somebody who was, who's drawing, right, doing anime, or maybe somebody who's dancing or acting or whatever. Um, and they're way they're just getting going in their career. Like, what's that piece of advice, you'd want to echo into that next generation of creatives?
As an artist, not a business focused artist, I would advise people to be as closer to themselves as possible, to kind of ignore what's going on outside of themselves, and to just have fun with it, to explore, to expand. I think a lot of these projects that we come to appreciate start out with experimentation and fun. And I think a lot of the times they're not focused specifically on the business aspect of it, trying to make something hot, trying to make something catch, trying to make something that's eye-catching, because I think that can also be observed. You know, we can tell when this kind of intent is placed on a body of work. And you know, the most beautiful things, I think, are, you know, personally speaking, the things that I don't see often, the things that change the way I think, the things that make me question. And these things, you know, can only occur when you're being very honest with yourself and, you know, pushing your boundaries, growing, learning, playing, experimenting. You know, I think I said that already, but yeah, that's the advice I have for the future generation.
Dude, amazing. Dude, this has been nothing short of amazing. Like just over an hour, like Easter eggs, like nuggets all throughout this whole episode.
Mhm.
Um,
I really
thank you.
appreciate it. You know, it's a great conversation when it doesn't feel like it's been an hour and 15.
Yeah, no, I mean, dude, we can go longer, you know, for sure, but I want people to be able to like enjoy the whole thing.
Yeah,
So
digest it and not have to spend like a whole day trying to make sense.
yeah, no, like they'll have to like listen to it in their car on the way to work and then pause it and then
Yeah,
like, you know, surprisingly, a lot of people listen to podcasts in their car, like when they're doing like daily activities, right? Like that's the beauty of this medium. It's like background information. And like, you know, when you really like strike a chord with somebody, like people remember that shit. Like people are like, dude,
absolutely.
I remember you talking about this. And like, I don't even remember talking about this. You know what I mean? Like as I record my next podcast, you know, like there's going to be a few things that stick with me, right? You know, like you talking about, you know, art is created by the interpreter, like shit like that. Like that's going to be the shit that I take. But like, you know, the small things like, you know, build the whole scene, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah,
dude, thank you.
truly
Thank you for being
appreciate
my
it.
dude. Thank you for being my first guest. Like, this is amazing. This is so much fun.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
I'll have to have, I mean, in the future, right? As this outlet grows, this is, I mean, you're the first guest, man. Like that is hopefully going to be written in my history book, but,
Let's go.
it's been an honor, man. It's been an honor.
Yeah, likewise, man. I really appreciated this conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening here to Unlocked, the Creative Podcast. Make sure you give us a follow, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Tune in for our next episode. We have some sick guests lined up, similar to KOROstyle, but this perspective is definitely going to be continued in our later episodes. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and we will see you on the next episode.